Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa. I'm joined by Eric Franchi and the co-founder of BranchLab, Josh Walsh. How's it going, Josh?
Hey, it's going good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Co-founder and CEO of BranchLab. By way of disclosure, a portfolio company of Appearham where I work. Welcome, Josh. How you doing, man?
Thank you. Yeah, doing really good. We've had an exciting couple of months over here, so yeah, doing
Yep.
good.
We're going to get into that. And the exciting couple of months includes one of the largest Series A raises in ad tech in recent history. Ari and I had a good debate on that at the Marketecture Pod, but we'll get into all of this stuff. So, origin story. You're interesting, Josh. So, you're a second time ad tech founder.
hmm
Your first company, AdTheorent, went public, was eventually acquired. There's like, I think, three archetypes of what happens next that we've observed, right? So some go away. They're like, I'm done with this ad tech thing. I have PTSD. I'm good. I'm gonna try, something else, conquer another mountain is archetype one. Archetype two is, the handful like me that go the VC route. But then there's three, and we're seeing this pattern more with other founders during this era of AI. They come back to ad tech and they build again. What brought you back to ad tech, and specifically why pharma as the vertical?
hmm Yeah. And I wonder how much of just generally, how much of us are coming back to this because building is so much easier nowadays. You can build a really great prototype in an hour. You can sort of bring ideas to life. And as you know, Eric, like that's just becomes infectious and builds on itself and goes from there. But me personally, so yeah, founded AdTheorent in 2011. We brought it public in 21. I actually took some time off and was pulled back. So I got my break like before AdTheorent was sold to Cadent. I was pulled back to kind of help out with a few things. And a big thing that I built in that second go at AdTheorent was a division called AdTheorent Health. The concept there being, pharma and healthcare customers would benefit from a specialized DSP. Um, and so went back, built that division out, became a very productive division in terms of contributing to EBITDA and things like that. Huge growth trajectory out of that group and out of that product set. And in doing that, got a front row seat with some of the largest pharma companies in the world and recognized that it's a much bigger problem than just a specialized DSP. The commercialization effort from research to patient population modeling, HCP modeling, audience creation, deployment, sizing, all these things like before it ever got to the AdTheorent Health DSP were all offline, all manual, took 3, 6, 9 months sometimes. And then on the other side was measurement. Measurement, takes many months. It's really hard to make any intelligent decisions from the current measurement that we get. And then add to that, the internet is dramatically changing, and therefore advertising is dramatically changing. And for me, it was kind of like two parts. Part one, the current system is really inefficient and slow. It's just a bad system. We could do better. And if we do that, then we should expect better health outcomes in this country. And how I make that jump is really, pharmaceutical healthcare marketing efforts. At best, they can convince somebody to talk to a doctor. Like we can't sell drugs. The best we can do is say, talk to your doctor if you feel this way, and perhaps there's something that'll make you feel better. There's kind of a large body of mostly academic work that would suggest, the more people speak with doctors, the better health outcomes they have. So if we can make this system better, we should expect that as an outcome. The inverse is if we don't catch up with where the industry is heading, we should expect a degradation in those health outcomes. So I took 1 day off in between. My last day at AdTheorent was January 31 of 24. and then I incorporated BranchLab on February 2nd. And I think also for me, the problem looks a lot like the problem we were trying to solve with AdTheorent in certain ways, AdTheorent being the first mobile DSP. And prior to that DSP, you had to buy media through ad networks or, large like app developers, all offline, slow. We wanted to build a system that could bring that online, allow agencies and in some cases brands to in-house all that activity. And BranchLab is doing a very similar thing at that level, whereas all this patient population work, all this audience creation work, deployment, optimization, measurement, it's all offline. It looks a lot like ad networks of 15 years ago, especially audience vendors. Like the large audience vendors, they're packaging up data that they buy from elsewhere into packages and reselling it offline. You can order it through a phone call or an email. Huge T&E budgets, like all the ad network stuff that we saw 15, 20 years ago kind of still exists here.
Not familiar.
And so there's just a big opportunity to, help the market evolve. And really we're kind of skipping a whole tech cycle, which is exciting. Like we're taking this whole process, which is offline. We're sort of skipping that SaaS cycle that has dominated for the past 15, 20 years, and we're going straight to, building with AI, agentic front ends, and these types of things. So it's a really exciting moment to take these folks that are, kind of used to working in these offline ways and rapidly bringing them into the future, which actually feels more human than that SaaS intermediary anyway.
Josh,
so it's kind of
I'm curious. So you mentioned that you started BranchLab 2 days after leaving AdTheorent, and you took AdTheorent all the way from startup right to public to a 9-figure acquisition. What are some of the things you were able to do like immediately as a second-time founder that like took you a long time to figure out with AdTheorent?
Yeah, that's a good question, Joe. Number one is proper fundraising. We kind of had to learn that as we went at AdTheorent. First-time founder, you just, and then the second thing is also kind of like who you work with, and like we worked with fantastic people at AdTheorent, and we had great investors. This time around, it's like you kind of just like know what you need and want, and you can get there hyper quick. And also just more availability, right? Like, talent wants to work for, a second-time founder more than they do a first-time founder, just to, and same with investors.
Let's dive deeper on the talent front. So what sort of, like, one way you could say that you do talent differently the second time around is you just know how to spot talent better, right? Like you know the types of people you need, you know what characteristics you're looking for. But how did the talent acquisition process change from the second time vis-a-vis the first time?
Yeah. Well, to get like to, I'll start with saying like our CTO, and this is not to say like the folks I worked with AdTheorent are like hyper intelligent, like great people. At BranchLab, my CTO Dan Parks, he founded a company, actually a mobile ad tech company called Placecast, sold it to Ericsson. He was CTO of Ericsson for a while, and then he was head of ad technology for Amazon Prime Video. So he built out that whole stack globally, including the NFL and kind of all of that. Like probably one of, if not the largest network in the world. And my conversations with Dan or like our head of AIs, Kat Drake, like prior to this, she was head of computational biology and data science at Verily, which is Google's health data play. Those folks are kind of like, have been around the block, have done really big things, are really impressive in terms of like their backgrounds and everything else. But more importantly, you can also sort of like subset out like, yes, you have a hyper impressive resume. But have you worked at a startup? Do you know what that really means? Because I now know what that really means. And it's not all like, it's not always like a party. Actually, most days it's really hard, and most days it's not very fun. Like it's a really hard job, and you kind of have to want that for some weird reason to like suffer most days. And so, number one, you just get a lot more inbound talent saying, I want to work here and I want to work for equity. And number two, you can sort of, take this larger funnel of talent coming in and subset out into like, okay, these people really know what it means. And it's, it could be 996 for 6 months in order to get something out the door. And you can recognize the people who are, I don't know, fanatical or crazy enough or dumb enough, I don't know what the right word is, who like are drawn to doing that with their lives. And so, yeah, you get more opportunities, but also you can better recognize like, okay, this person is a bit of a lunatic in this way, and that's what's required in order to do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk about the fundraise. So you made the news a couple of weeks ago, raising a $26 million Series A, which is really big by ad tech standards. And what we traded notes on this when we posted. Like one of the things that was very interesting about it was the investor base was really neat and different. So you have, I think, both the manufacturing and the distribution side of pharma, like as lead investors backing the company. That's like unique. How did you pull that together?
Yeah. It was a fun process. It was a draining like raising money is always draining, right?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy too.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was a fun time to be doing it just like in the world, like way different than raising money, 15 years ago. And for us, it was like, okay, what are the things that are really important for us in building this out? And so it was kind of, for us, it was fourfold. McKesson really represents not just distribution. McKesson sits on by far the best data in the space. So, McKesson's an interesting company. I think, as of last quarter or maybe a quarter before, they're like the 7th largest company in the US by revenue. So Alphabet is number 6 and beat them out by like single percentage points. It's possible that McKesson overtakes Google like incoming quarter or Alphabet incoming quarters. Possible, who knows?
Incredible.
But this massive company, all of healthcare in this country and across the world runs on McKesson, not just for distribution. They also own all the software. Like they own companies that do 83% of all prescription adjudications. They own prior auth data. They own the largest US oncology network in the world. So all these oncology physicians work for McKesson. They own the EMR that facilitates all the data in those hospitals that they own for the largest largest oncology network. So McKesson they're just an interesting company. They've been around forever. It's like I'm sure we've all read like Good to Great. Like they so squarely fit in the good to great definition in that book, and that like they've just been a leader for so long. And so the team is great. The assets they sit on are great. They're an incredibly smart, hyper, scaled company. And for us, again, most importantly, like we're now in very early. They're a big company. I'm sure it'll be much slower moving than BranchLab, but early conversations to like how can we better integrate and work together with these data assets and in other ways. So that's McKesson. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, keep going.
And of course, like the underlying data of what we're, training our infrastructure from is very important. McKesson's the best in the world. Number 2 on that list is FCA. FCA is a pure financial. And so, we didn't want to just choose strategics only. We want, financial discipline. We want folks that have been investing into the best companies in healthcare for a long time. And FCA is that more, traditional financial venture capitalists. We want them at the table, sitting around literally sitting around the board table. AIX is a premier AI fund out of the Valley. One of their partners is Chris Manning, who prior to going to AIX, he was the director of the Stanford AI Lab, and inventor of a technology called Glove, which is a precursor to transformer technology, basically like natural language processing. Just put Chris and the AIX crew at the, at the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge of AI work. And so to be able to get, them as an investor, get them involved, but also access to the team that works there, and then be able to work with them on a daily basis was important to us. So, data, financial discipline, AI expertise, and then Sanofi is probably obvious. Sanofi was actually probably the most difficult decision for us because not every pharma manufacturer has a VC group that is allowed to invest in tech. So of the top 10, maybe half have VC funds that can, but they were all at the table. And so making the decision of working with Sanofi was quite challenging.
Josh, so you mentioned that you were able to do fundraising smarter this time. What about this time was smarter? Was it like this diverse mix of players? Was it something in the way you crafted the pitch?
Probably a bit of both. I think second time around, you're really able to be thoughtful as to who do you want to put around the table? What do they bring? How do they complement each other? How are they going to challenge me? How do they make me better?
Yeah.
As a group, and we as a group, we're working together, I'm spending multiple days up at Sanofi HQ. The idea here is we're really working together deeply as a team. And so in the same way that you'd want to craft, a really good management team at a company, that's not a terrible way to think about how to, raise a big series, an A or B or beyond. These are folks that you want to be working with. They need to be bringing additional value than just capital. Again, that's a little bit different than 15 years ago, by the way. 15 years ago, it was a lot less options. Founder friendly wasn't a term. And it was you needed money, And nowadays, yeah, you need money, but also there's so much opportunity that you get to ask okay, and what else? And how does that fit into this larger puzzle? And how are we going to build a great business? How are we going to build a really big business? And what's your role in helping build that business?
Yeah. Before we get into kind of more about the opportunity, we got to ask. So ahead of the A, you had an opportunity to get another investor involved, Next Ventures, which is Lance Armstrong's fund.
Yep.
Tell us the story quickly about how all that came together. I think you said it once at Marketecture, maybe Lance did, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what's it like working with him? One of the goats of sport.
Yeah. I'll first just say Lance is great. He's great to work with. He's pretty involved in the company. We had an offsite here a couple weeks ago. He came out, hung with the team, did a panel, did a hike with the whole company. I don't know, it's just a smart, motivated, person with a unique experience and perspective on the world, and we can draw from that. The story's, I don't know, kind of a fun one in that, I get a LinkedIn message basically saying, I want to come out to Boulder and talk to you about your company. Can I swing by on Monday? And,
From who? Who sent the message?
It was either Lance or another. So yeah, Lance is a GP. There's great talent at Next.
So you get a DM, a LinkedIn DM from Lance Armstrong.
I think so. Yeah.
So your first thought is what?
My first thought is this a bot? Right?
Of course.
My second thought is, and you know this, Eric, like that's an investor's job to like always be sending out those types of notes, and we weren't in fundraising mode, and I'm heads down and I'm like onboarding customers and doing that. And so I'm like, I don't know, do I really have time for this? Well, they're willing to come out and spend an hour at our office. Like, okay, cool. So I meet Lance, I meet his partner Jordan, um, and and yeah, that was like Monday afternoon. They basically said, I don't know, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday at some point, they were like, we don't want to wait for you to properly raise the Series A. We want to get in now. Um, and we believe that we have until Friday to convince you to do that. And so we actually closed the deal Friday at like 8 in the morning. So it was really quick.
Same week.
Same
Same
week.
week.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was really quick and kind of an obvious yes for us. Like the team is really high caliber. Like the next team worked with me every day during the Series A process. Like we had scheduled like bi-weekly calls. Like I was calling these guys' cell phones and they're making introductions and we're strategizing together. Just like can't say enough good things about the next team. And but yeah, it was super quick. It was totally unexpected, and it was like, and then the next week I'm like bringing in a framed, signed jersey to the company and being like, I had really
Yeah.
fun news, and so it was cool. Yeah.
That's crazy. So LinkedIn DM, you're like, what is this? Meeting on a Monday, sign and close on a Friday. And we were talking throughout that. For the listener, typically fundraise cycles take months and closings can take months as well. So this is, to give folks context, like insane. And then I'd add on top of it, it's Lance Armstrong. So super cool story. Joe, what you got? You want to talk about the sort of like pharma and the biz?
Yeah, so Josh, we've been talking about with a lot of companies in the space this term, the outcomes era, right? Which may be something that has changed from the beginning of the ad theorent days to now, right? Is that every company in the space is now being held to the standard of driving measurable outcomes. How does that play out in pharma specifically, and how does that inform the branch lab opportunity?
Yeah. Um, this industry is way behind. Um, and and it's not for lack of trying. It is a much harder problem. Um, I should actually say on the upfront, like the reason why it's dominated by like audience vendors is because the data assets are challenging to work with, hyper unique state and federal regulations. Uh, like it's not for lack of trying, let's say, and measurement and optimization, which largely doesn't really exist. Like optimization today exists, or prior to BranchLab would exist, like an agency would choose two, three, or maybe even 10 audience vendors, measure audience quality, or maybe 6 months in something like a prescription fill lift. And then based on what they see, they would contact those audience vendors and say, hey, you're under or overperforming. And then an audience vendor would say, okay, like let me tweak some things in the background and I'll increase performance. Feels really ad networky. Totally black box, totally offline, like, the world that we used to know 15 years ago. We need to correct for all of this. I'll say we have a planning and optimization module that we're going into beta with a couple manufacturers. We're too early to talk about it in great detail. I will say if you're going to be at Cannes, you can find my co-founder, Michael Parks, and being my co-founder slash CRO, I know him well enough to know that he would probably show it to you on his computer, even though he shouldn't. So largely, Joe, there's just a lot of work to be done here. We will get there. But as of right now, real optimization efforts may happen once, if at all, per year. Outside of like optimizing audience vendors, but they do that manually, offline, black box. We don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
There's way more that we can
So
we can
that's a
do.
world apart from what we would view as the gold standard in the rest of digital advertising
I
and
th-
figure, yeah,
I
that's where a
think
lot of the opportunity comes from.
I think so, but I also think we'll get there quickly. Like we're not talking. This is not 2 years away. This is 6 to 12 months away until it either meets or could exceed what we're used to in the rest of the world in other industries. I think there's just so much that we could do here. The constraints are largely just state and federal regulations, which is a good thing. Like I think those regulations could be stronger, frankly, and might be. But that's not to say that we can't do a better job understanding the efficacy of our efforts um, on a weekly, daily, maybe hourly basis. Um, and right now, we're looking at the efficacy at like a 6 month interval at best. So yeah, plenty to do.
What role does AI play in not just solving these problems and overcoming these constraints in the pharma space, but also in how you're building a company now versus how you might have done it 10 years ago?
Geez, building now versus building 10 years ago is just a different thing. Number one, well, I'll give you a real example, right? So like this planning and optimization tool set that we're going into beta with, we built it out, we showed it to a couple customers, we got some really great feedback, and then I was on a plane flying to Boston to like spend a day with them and go a little bit deeper. On a 4 hour plane ride, I'm able to completely implement every recommendation that they wanted and a whole bunch of other ones that they kind of didn't even think was possible. And so in a 4 hour plane ride, I'm sitting down with them and showing them the thing, and they're like, "Whoa, that's exactly what we envisioned and described to you." And it's like, yeah, like that's the speed at which we can build now. Um, it's so I would say, like from a build perspective, prototypes need to take hours, not months. You can get to a point of deployment you can be shipping intra week, and I think you should be. Like ship intra week, you can monitor everything that customers are doing within your platform and tweak things and ship the next week and measure, and it's almost like it's like the lean startup was written for today
Yeah.
because you can just condense all those cycles down by like a factor of 10. And so from a build perspective, um, we're just not, you're not sitting in a room and building out, Figma files and PDFs and designing them and doing, like, you're just sitting in a room and building, and you're getting it done in 3 hours. Um, and so from a build perspective, it's just radically different. And that, everything needs to be plugged on top of like a hyper strong foundation, everything else, like, not to say that a company is built in 3 hours, right? Like a company is built over many years, but sitting on top of a strong foundation, you can just move at a totally different pace. And that was the second part of your question. And I'm forgetting the first now.
How it's changing the way you solve the problems in pharma that BranchLab
Okay.
tackles.
So the problems in healthcare and the problems in pharma, we can think about them as twofold, right? Like number one, largely it's offline. They don't have software. We should build that software. We should probably build every software agentic first. Like that will be the new way to interact with technology. It's just a better way to interact with technology, which is to say like a wrapper. Nothing super interesting, but you got to be really good at building out great RAG processes and wrappers to be able to have a human communicate with your technology agentically. Like that is how people will communicate and interact with technology, period. But we're not going to build, nor should most companies build, an LLM to be able to facilitate that. Like it's a RAG process, it's a wrapper, it's like valuable, but not really valuable. In pharma, the larger and way more challenging problem, which took us a couple of years to solve, is that you need to be able to understand who is likely to, say, interact in a certain way with a message about a condition, a health condition. And you need to train different types of models on health data in a very privacy conscious manner, so that, like, my customers via an agentic front end talk to a model about what the model learned about regulated data. My customers can't access that data. I don't sell data. I don't sell audiences. Like, really, my customers upload their own data, their own highly regulated data. My agency customers upload their demographic data. I have a bunch of different sources of data that I can also load up into it. And my customers communicate with an agent about a model that understands all that data. Largely a type of model called a transformer model is largely what we use, but it's kind of a stack of things together. And that then allows, from like a privacy perspective, like when I walk into a pharma manufacturer, when I walk into a big healthcare agency, we have to go through a legal process. Like, hey, we're not allowed to look at any of this data. Cool, you're not going to. Like, in the same way that you're hiring data scientists to understand regulated data, and then you get to ask questions of the data scientist, I'm going to train a transformer model, or model architecture, I should say, on that same data. And then I'm going to put an agent that can talk to that model. And you will get to ask questions of a model versus questions of a data scientist, which would take 3 to 6 months. It'll take 3 to 6 seconds. And you can ask questions, and you can build an audience, and you can deploy it, and you can optimize it, and you can measure it. And it's not going to take 6 months. It's going to take 6 minutes. And so effectively, what we built here, which is to say a self-service tool in place of kind of a more offline ad network model, probably wouldn't have been possible even 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that was going to be, I think, the last kind of formal question, which is, what does this look like in 5 years? I think you basically painted the picture of what your customers, might interact with your platform in 5 years. Maybe taking a step back, right? So, like AI is changing how you're building. You're building in a $33 billion market in terms of advertising spend. So like this enormous market that's like very unique, and understandably so, in terms of, like restrictions and regulations. What do you think changes the most about pharma advertising over the course of the next 5 years, just with all of these shifts that are happening under our feet? And ultimately, like, how are you guys fitting into it?
Yeah. 5 years is a long time.
I know. Maybe 3 years.
Yeah. Well, I think the most obvious is just the radical change that the open internet is undergoing is much more pronounced in healthcare. So in other words, we used to go to Google and say, hey,
Right.
I feel this way, or this thing is happening to me, or I was just diagnosed with this condition. And Google, there'd be a bunch of paid listings. Those paid listings would be pharma marketers or healthcare marketers. Below that would be, WebMD or Healthline.com or some community or what have you.
And every answer, by the way, was like, you're going to die. Like,
Yeah. That's
never
right.
look at WebMD.
That's true. You probably have some hyper rare form of cancer. Go see a doctor immediately.
Right.
Well, nowadays, as we all experience, you get an answer from Gemini, and it takes the whole screen. So if we think about that, right, like marketing opportunities were highly productive in search, paid search, and that's going away. It's almost gone already. Below that would have been contextual, retargeting, communities, all of those places, like Google was their source of traffic. All those ad networks, like all of that stuff is largely, gone in I would say under 2 years. And so if we think about the opportunities that we have, I don't know, maybe at some point, I hope not, knock on wood, maybe I'll be diagnosed with macular degeneration at some point in my life. right? Like I'll be diagnosed. There's maybe some intent signals as I want to just like learn more about it. But I live with that condition for a long time. And if new treatment comes out, if new therapies come out that could improve my condition, the only way that you can reach me is through an audience because I'm not on search. There is no contextual anymore, right? Like these things are rapidly gone. So the way we think about the future of the world is what environments will persist and how can we embed in those environments. I think the obvious ones that we would likely all agree on is CTV has a strong moat, so does social, and agentic is a no-brainer. Will there be other environments beyond those? Probably. We don't know what they look like right now. Like 5 years is a long time. And so what we're focused on is how can we help our customers deeply understand the populations that they care about, and get messaging and education of therapies that could help out those populations, and make the data portable in a way that it could, port to social, CTV, agentic environments, or fill in the blank future, place where people will spend their time. And the way we accomplish that is not by taking data, packaging it up, and like reselling it as a vendor, but rather integrating with our customers' data, integrating with our agency customer data, integrating with those end destination data so that we can understand the overlap of these things, and present everyone with an agentic way to work together, a single system where they can work together, build these things out, and deploy them, like I said, in 6 seconds, not 6 minutes.
Awesome. Joe, you got anything else, or we can get into the lightning round?
Do your thing.
All right. We're experimenting with a new thing on the pod. Get ready, Josh.
Okay.
You're a very deep thinker, but I've spent time with you, and you're also an interesting, fun guy. So we're gonna hit you with fast questions, fast answers, just to reach into your mind a little bit. Okay.
Yes.
Question 1: New York or Boulder?
Boulder. I used to live in New York, and I moved out here to Boulder, so that's an easy one.
Why?
Well,
Why Boulder?
New York is a great place. I was there for 10 plus years. Boulder for me right now, the environment is great. The talent pool here is exceptional. We also just recently, like a couple months ago, moved into Google built out a few campuses here. They left one campus and we took it over. So right now I'm like just totally geeked out. There's like a climbing wall in the lobby and the space is beautiful. And yeah, so like
Set up ad tech startup out there with the former Google campus.
Yeah.
right.
All right. Boulder wins. Bike or run?
Geez, it's got to be bike for me nowadays. I was a long distance runner for a long time. And then Lance orchestrated a gift, which is for us, which are BranchLab, like custom BranchLab painted Ventum bikes. They're kind of like the highest of high level, like gravel and road bikes. And they're just so addictive to ride. Like I rode it into work today. It's just, I haven't really ridden bikes since I was like a kid. And so all the new technology, it's like everything is wireless and the whole thing weighs like less than my iPhone, it feels like. And it's just an incredible machine that I just have a ton of respect for. So been a long distance runner, trail runner for, 20 years. But sitting on a Ventum bike, I'm just like so geeked out on it. So at least in the moment, biking.
Lance made him say that. Lance is actually standing behind Josh with a weapon, right. And he was like, look, it's biking propaganda or I'm out of this thing.
Exactly.
So Josh is merely cohering.
All right. Who's harder to sell to, pharma brands or consumer brands?
Consumer, big time. Pharma is way leaned into, they're way leaned into how to do this better. They have it's like a different set of responsibility for them. Like they care deeply about their place in the world. And so for me, at least, like to have a thoughtful, deep conversation, like Eric, it's not uncommon for us to like book an introduction to BranchLab and have it be 90 minutes. And it's just a different level of interest and curiosity and sense of responsibility. Maybe that's not fair to say easier, um, but but it's a different thing, and I really enjoy it.
Well, so much of the challenge in advertising, I feel like, is getting an advertiser or an agency that really wants to understand how this stuff works, right? And wants to improve the process in their tech stack. And so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I think it's a good place to end it. What do you think, Joe?
Sounds good to me. Josh, you're a true Coloradan. We'll let you get out there on your bike and enjoy the outdoors.
Right on.
Josh,
All
Thanks,
thank
right.
you
Jeff.
so much. This is
Yeah.
awesome. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you next week. Bye bye.